Good morning, and welcome to Connections Radio Show. I'm Laurie Fitz, your host, and as you know, our show is all about a wide range of topics that challenge us to see our community, ourselves, and the world around us in ways that get us thinking, get us connected, get us talking, get us more aware, and perhaps gaining something through the conversation. Perhaps that's a wider perspective. And it's the first Saturday of the month, and many of you know what happens on the first Saturday of the month. We get to work with Eastside Freedom Library. They are our co-hosts, co-producers. And the Eastside Freedom Library is a wonderful place, and I always enjoy having Peter Ratcliffe, who is our co-host, share about what's happening with the Eastside this month and what's happening in the news as well that may impact what's happening at the Eastside Freedom Library. Welcome, Peter.
Thank you, Laurie. We're just thrilled to have this platform and to be able to work with you and your listeners.
It's always a special time because your Eastside Freedom Library allows us to think about art. It allows us to think about labor. It allows us to think about what's happening in politics, about our homes, how we're connected. And from the very first time that you were on our show, when we were doing last year around June, July, when we were looking at plays coming up at the Fringe Festival, but there's something special about what's going on at the Eastside Freedom Library, and I want it to be a part of what our listeners can experience as well.
Well, and we think there's something special happening at AM 950, so we're really glad to be able to be part of that.
Yeah, good partnership. So this has been an interesting last couple weeks.
Yeah, I mean, I think it sets a great context for the work that we're trying to do at the library. We have seen the University of Minnesota Board of Regents in a very dramatic public meeting refused to change the names of 4 buildings that were named for administrators who implemented racist and anti-Semitic practices. And there was a tremendous crowd at the meeting and a marvelous lecture provided by John Wright, who is sadly for us retiring from the University of Minnesota from the African and African American Studies Department. We saw the Republicans in the Minnesota State Senate announce that they were going to radically cut the budget of the Minnesota Historical Society for adding signage at Fort Snelling, not taking away
it was
signage,
an addition too. Yeah,
adding signage that would recognize that this was the Badote spot, the place of origins
and
for
the
Dakota
Badote
people.
Goes back
thousands,
many years, thousands. And we reject that as we're uncomfortable with having.
Right.
Why?
Yeah.
Why not honor? Is there... Perhaps there's guilt. Perhaps there's just blinders being put on because it's easier to not look at what has happened in our past.
Right. And they call us revisionists. And as someone who earned a PhD in history and taught history for almost 40 years, I can tell the listeners every historian is a revisionist. We're always digging up the past and looking at it in new ways.
How we tell our story and
Absolutely.
How we learn.
Absolutely.
What things do we focus on? What is, and it's his story. It is a story.
Yeah.
It's a story we tell.
Yeah.
And if the story doesn't agree with what we want to believe, it's ignored.
Right.
And how do we dig up the things that were ignored and go, we want to have them be part of our story?
Yep.
What does that story look like?
And then a third incident in the last week, the Minnesota Court of Appeals overruled the state of Minnesota, the Department of Natural Resources action more than a year ago in changing the name of Lake Calhoun to Bide Minska. I'm sorry that I'm not pronouncing it correctly. But changing the name from what had been named for the vice president of the Confederacy and an advocate of the perpetuation of slavery to the name that Native Americans, Dakota people in particular, had given this body of water. And so we see 3 occasions in which power has manifested itself to deny us the opportunity to continue a conversation about the relationship between the past and the present. And at the Eastside Freedom Library, we're really committed to using art and culture as vehicles to promote those conversations, even those conversations that may be uncomfortable for some of us to participate in. And it's been great for us to experience our neighbors and people from the wider Twin Cities who come to the library and are willing to put themselves in the position of listening, put themselves in the position of asking questions about their own privileges and benefits, and really engaging with a wide variety of their neighbors. So, I'm sure you and some of the listeners remember that a month ago, we had Sian Thomas of ABC Realty on, and in anticipation of a program that we had on how to close the housing gap. 60 people showed up on the night of an April snowstorm and had a fantastic conversation in which people really listened to each other. And then this past week, we had an event with Russ Stark and Mayor Carter exploring the city's plans to embrace addressing climate change and to take responsibility for lowering emissions, both that the city itself generates, but also that all of us who live in St. Paul are contributing to. And again, a very large and diverse crowd of people sat and had a conversation with each other. And it's interesting that we have to say having a real conversation with each other seems like a progressive or radical act, but it is, and it happens.
When people's time is limited, and you're caught up with a long to-do list, conversations can almost be a luxury.
Sure.
But they feed us. And if we're not having good conversation, if we're not thinking about it, if we're not continuing to learn, we're not developing our full selves. We're not having that opportunity to see. People may not know exactly what they want to do when they come to the Eastside Freedom Library. I think just coming to an event there and learning that it's there and then being able to go to the calendar and go, well, what sounds kind of interesting? How can I get engaged?
Right.
Because that's part of what makes it vibrant are the people that show up. Right.
And we're trying to entice more of them to become ongoing participants. We use the noun collaborators to describe people who choose, after having attended an event or two, that they'd like to get involved and help other events take shape. And in many cases, they end up providing the very ideas that become future events. So we're trying not just to be a place, but also to be an organization, and to be an organization in which people build community. And I guess, sort of participate in a process of lifelong learning.
Yes.
And none of us are finished products. We are all still works in progress. And it's great for me, like I'm the biggest participant. I'm there every night. And I get to learn something new every single day from the people who come in and bring their imaginations and their talent
It must be
us.
a joy as well to see how it's grown.
Yeah, it's interesting sitting here at the beginning of May. Next month, June, will mark the 5th anniversary of the Eastside Freedom Library. And your listeners can be the first to know that we will celebrate that 5th anniversary in an event on June 12th featuring Jelani Cobb, who is a journalist at The New Yorker, is a PhD historian, educated at Howard University, started his teaching career at Spelman, has been a remarkable activist scholar, as we like to call ourselves, and we're thrilled that Jelani is coming out from New York to help us celebrate our 5th anniversary. And that's on the eve of Juneteenth, and so there'll be a lot going on around this 5th anniversary. And it is a kind of pinch, how did all this happen so fast?
Starting with an idea.
Yeah. And
there's a library. We shouldn't let this.
There's an empty library in a working class immigrant neighborhood. What should happen to it? Yep.
And you and your co-executive director said, well, it should be a place where people gather.
Yep.
And it should be a place where there can be art.
Yep.
It should be a place where people can feel safe and share their story. That story is really the through line through it all.
Absolutely, the through line. Yeah. And Beth's work in theater has really brought us more layers of relationships and ideas. And it was so wonderful this past week to attend the Tashi Reagan performance of The Parable of the Sower at O'Shaughnessy Auditorium, and to see how a blend of gospel, folk, rhythm, and blues could take a piece of African-American feminist speculative fiction and spin and present a story that powerfully impacted 1,800 people sitting in that auditorium. The power of art was on display in a very, very big way.
It gives me chills thinking about it. And I know that the rest of our show, we're going to be talking about some events coming up in May that we want to make sure folks are aware of. But I also want to make sure that people, if you want to look at your calendar to see what's coming up, you can go to the eastsidefreedomlibrary.org. And I also want to mention that when you're in the East Side, go to Brunson's Pub. It's not only a cool place with great food and great atmosphere, they're supporting our show. And we thank them for being a part of our partnership in getting the good work out and inviting folks to be part of the Eastside Freedom Library and taking the Eastside Freedom Library to the air through AM 950, our Connections radio show. To check out Brunson's Pub, you can go to brunsonspub.com. Stay with us. We're going to talk about events coming up, and I know you'll want to learn about them. So just a few short commercials, and then we'll be right back.
I'm Peter Ratcliffe from the Eastside Freedom Library, and I'd like to tell you about an historic place on Payne Avenue. Brunson's Pub is a place where history and passion are a part of every detail, starting with the menu. The Payne Phelan neighborhood arose from Dakota people who lived here for hundreds of years, and pioneering immigrant communities, Irish, Swedes, German, and Italians, who made the East Side their home. More recently, waves of new residents from Asia, Latin America, and Africa continue the rich immigrant history and are revitalizing the community's cultural life and economy. Come experience Brunson's Pub at 956 Payne Avenue and grab a discounted gift card when you mention that you're an AM 950 listener or a supporter of the Eastside Freedom Library. Be sure to check out brunsonspub.com.
Find a wide selection of outdoor hearth products at Woodland Stoves and Fireplaces. Whether you prefer wood or gas, Woodland Stoves has the fire to fit your home. Pizza aficionados know nothing matches masonry oven baking for capturing flavor and nutrition. Woodland Stoves and Fireplaces can easily install one in your home or business. Enthusiasts use these ovens year-round for bread making, wood roasting, even grilling.
The mission and passion of Woodland Stoves and Fireplaces is to make the fire work for you. The way humans relate to fire is primordial. We have used fire to warm our bodies, cook our meals, and kindle our spirits. Our team has the know-how to do this in a clean-burning and environmentally smart way. Visit our store and experience the diversity. We have over 35 working units on display at the corner of Riverside and East Franklin. See us online at woodlandstoves.com. Find the fire that fits and works for you.
Woodland Stoves and Fireplaces, out of the ordinary products and services since 1977.
I'm Connie Burek, co-host of Awakened Living Infusion radio show. Join Michelle Kitzmiller and I as we focus on all aspects of health, wellness, spirituality, and growth from a mind, body, spirit, emotion perspective. On the Awakened Living radio show, we will discuss stress, self-care, fear, happiness, beliefs, communication, joy, pain, trauma, and more. Join us for the Awakened Living Infusion radio show Saturdays at 10 a.m. Let us share with you ways to infuse vitality into life.
It's the age of artificial intelligence. 85-year-old Marjorie, a jumble of disparate, fading memories, has a handsome new companion, me, a hologram who's been programmed to feed her the story of her life back to her. If given the chance, what would you remember? What would you forget? Jordan Harrison's new play explores the mysteries of human identity and what technology offers. Prime Productions presents the play Marjorie Prime at St. Paul's Park Square Theater. Performances run April 19th to May 19th. For tickets, visit parksquaretheater.org.
Good morning. Welcome back to Connections Radio Show. I'm Lori Fitz, your host, and we're talking about ideas that matter, and I'm glad that you joined the conversation. Many of you know that the first Saturday of the month is always the Eastside Freedom Library week of discussion. So I'm particularly happy that we have Peter Ratcliffe, who is the co-executive director of the Eastside Freedom Library. Here is my co-anchor today.
Yes.
My co-host.
Yes, your co-conspirator.
My co-conspirator, which I actually prefer. And we also want to do a big shout-out, thank you, to the Brunson Pub, which is a place where history and passion are part of every detail, starting with the menu, and it's inspired by the neighborhood, and it's for the neighborhood, and they support our show. You have a guest today who is here to talk about a program coming up at the Eastside Freedom Library. I'll let you do the introductions, my friend.
Great, thank you. As we were saying in the first segment, story is really important at the Eastside Freedom Library, and using art and culture as a way to nurture and present stories. So we were thrilled when the Ragamala Dance Theater came to us and asked us to host a conversation that they wanted to have together with the theater artists from Full Circle Theater about issues of identity and representation and performance. And so today we were able to interest Eric Madsen-Bond, who is the engagement director for Ragamala, to join us on the air and tell us a bit about this project. And it's a project that is going to last many months, and we're one community conversation among many. So it's a great intersection between the Eastside Freedom Library and this project of Ragamala's. Eric, so glad to have you with us.
Wonderful. Thank you very much for having me. It's great to be here.
Now, Eric, there's quite a few of these conversations going on. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so just a little bit of background about Ragamala Dance Company for any listeners who might not know. Founded in the Twin Cities in 1992 by Rani Ramaswamy, now under the co-artistic direction of Rani and her daughter Aparna Ramaswamy. Ragamala approaches the South Indian classical dance form of Bharatanatyam as a living, breathing, contemporary language. And this intergenerational, culturally hybridic practice is central to identity. And we believe that it really illuminates the fluidity of ancient and cultural forms to speak to contemporary human experience. So this series that you mentioned is called Ragamala Rooted, and it is a year-long series leading up to a performance of our multidisciplinary dance piece, Written in Water, at the Ordway in St. Paul in February 2020. And leading up to that, to sort of build audiences and explain our work and introduce our work to new audiences and further explain it to existing audiences, we've taken kind of the central idea of Written in Water and Ragamala's work and just completely blown it up, exploded it, and managed to find 12 aspects, elements of that sort of make up this work. And then each one of those 12 elements we've turned into both a physical event that is a conversation, a master class, a lecture demonstration, so many different formats for doing this, and then as well as a extensive digital platform. So much of this is to be announced in the next couple of weeks. Stay tuned to the Ordway's website, as well as ragamallarooted.org. You can find out more information about this project and the upcoming performance.
So of the 12 that are happening throughout the Twin Cities, or it's just in St. Paul?
Just in St. Paul.
Just in St. Paul. Is the one that you're doing with the Eastside on identity and creative practice, is that the aspect that you're most looking at for that conversation? Yeah,
fundamentally, it's just the idea of identity and cultural identity in particularly like American work or American art being created in America.
That is rooted in India.
Exactly. But it is both very Indian and very American.
One of the things that we talked about a little bit before our interview today was you were telling me about the language of the dance and how much that attracted the idea of having these very strict rules like ballet, very strict dance, but yet the expression of being able to, once one knows that language, to express it differently.
Yeah, so we talk about Bharatanatyam as a language. It has a grammar. There's a certain way in which your movements are supposed to work together, certain ways in which sort of the piece flows, and there's different elements of Bharatanatyam. But what's so valuable about any language is that once you're a master, you can do exciting different things with that.
You can
language.
have nuance at that point. So there's pure dance.
Yes.
And that's the structure, the language, the movement that has an identity in and of itself that one must learn and have the discipline to learn. But then there's the other part that is abhinaya.
Yeah, so there's two main primary elements of Bharatanatyam. There's pure dance, which is really physical,
rich structure,
full body and movement across the stage. And then there's abhinaya, which is much more expressive and nuanced, and it's usually, as a singer is singing poetry, it's the dancer sort of living within that poetry and finding their own world within that poetry. And
so they're going into the woods. Tell me the dance that they might do about the poetry of the woods.
Yeah, so if the poetry is about the woods, the dancer both lives in the woods and then creates a world that exists in those woods. And so it's the birds and it's the bees and it's the water and it's all these things that really evoke a incredibly rich and nuanced.
So it's both the literal woods as well as some of the reading between the lines, some of the feelings of the woods that you have, exactly. That peace or that magic that comes out of it.
Yeah.
Now your background is in technical theater, and I know I do this all the time. I get into a conversation I want to have, and I have only about a minute and a half left, but we'll move into the next segment as well. Your technical theater was part of what brought you into this interest of the Ragamala theater, that there was the technique as well as the expression. Tell me about that, too.
Yeah, I've been involved in a lot of performing arts in many different capacities, particularly coming from a technical theater background. And as I was introduced to Ragamala, it seemed like such a wonderful company. The rigor with which they approach all of their work and the beauty with which they express their work immediately stood out to me. They're such Ronnie and Aparna as artistic directors are really visionary leaders and are always planning years in advance. And it's just it's an exciting company to work for.
Well, I'm fascinated with connections and how people get connected to something and how our audience might get connected with the Ragamala through listening to your passion and knowing that it's going to be at the Eastside Freedom Library. You can learn more about this also by going to the Eastside Freedom Library. The date is May 6th.
May 20th.
May 20th. Oh, this is...
Yes.
I went to the other thing that's happening on May 6th. You'll all have to listen in for what's happening on May 6th.
Yeah.
But it is
May 20th.
May 20th. A good conversation will be had by all. And it's free and open to all. But we always suggest that it's a nice thing to support the Eastside Freedom Library, and suggested donations are there as well. But check it out by going to the eastsidefreedomlibrary.org for more information. And we'll be back to talk more about Ragamala as well as other events that are happening at the Eastside Freedom Library. Be right back.
In 1977, NASA launched the Voyager spacecrafts, satellites sent from Earth to study the farthest reaches of outer space. Aboard these Voyagers were the Golden Records, time capsules filled with images, sounds, and music that tell the story of our world. Astronomer Carl Sagan said, "The launching of these records into the cosmic ocean says something very hopeful about life on this planet. But can we still find that hope? If you could send a message out to the universe today, what would you say?" This April, join Sandbox Theater for the Golden Record Project, an intimate event 42 years in the making. The Golden Record Project is a search for connection, a hopeful call to other worlds, and a declaration that we are here. The Golden Record Project, April 12th through May 4th at the Sandbox. Tickets and information at sandboxtheateronline.com. The Golden Record Project. What would you share?
Mark your calendars to attend the second annual Powderhorn Shark Tank Small Business Competition for makers, hustlers, and entrepreneurs Saturday, May 18th at 10 a.m. As one of the Twin Cities' most refreshing and authentic community-centered small business competitions, this event will feature live pitches from 13 finalists who offer a wide range of products and services. 6 winners will be chosen by a phenomenal panel of judges and will receive thousands of dollars in cash prizes. Held in the heart of South Minneapolis at the Powderhorn Recreation Center, located at 3400 South 15th Avenue. This is a family-friendly event you don't want to miss. The Powderhorn Park Neighborhood Association is the proud host of this event, which is made possible in part by the generous support of several lead sponsors, including U.S. Bank, the Stewart Community Co-op, and the Midtown Global Market. Learn more at www.ppna.org. See you all on May 18th.
Looking to experience the Northwoods and Boundary Waters? Big Bear Lodge is the perfect choice. May and June are a perfect time to spot some moose as well as have great fishing. Mention AM 950 during May and you'll receive 10% off when you book the Dakota Cabin. A cozy cabin perfect for couples or a single person looking to unplug and unwind. Find out more about this great getaway and see their authentic modern woodsy cabins at BigBearLodgeMN.com. That's BigBearLodgeMN.com.
I'm Peter Ratcliffe from the Eastside Freedom Library, and I'd like to tell you about an historic place on Payne Avenue, Brunson's Pub. Experience history and passion through the delicious menu, reflecting the East Side's diversity. The choices are limitless: salads, sandwiches, burgers, and shareable plates. Visit Brunson's Pub at 956 Payne Avenue and grab a discounted gift card when you mention that you're an AM 950 listener or a supporter of the Eastside Freedom Library. Be sure to check out brunsonspub.com.
With your AM 950 weather, I'm Brett Johnson. Look for sunny skies today with a high near 72. Tonight, a slight chance for rain with a low around 45. Sunday, partly sunny with a high near 60. And Monday, rain with a high around 61. Located in downtown St. Paul, Burger Mo's is the perfect neighborhood gathering spot before or after XL Energy events. They offer 20 fresh, never frozen varieties, as well as delicious apps, soups, salad, dogs, paninis, shakes, and desserts. Also, make sure you try their unburgers. More at BurgerMo's.com.
Welcome back to Connections Radio Show. We're so glad that you joined the conversation today, and we talk about ideas that matter. And it's the first Saturday, so we get to talk about the Eastside Freedom Library and some wonderful programs that are happening there. And I have Peter Ratcliffe, who is the co-executive director of the Eastside Freedom Library and is my co-host for these shows. Welcome, Peter.
Thank you, Lori.
We had a nice conversation. We started off talking about Ragamala and the May 20th discussion that you're going to be doing. Tell me more about that, and also I'll let you introduce our guest again.
Yeah, so again, we're talking with Eric Madsden Bond, who is the Director of Engagement for Ragamala Dance Theater, and we're just so glad to have Eric here. I will reveal to listeners, unless they're have watched the Facebook Live capture of this, that Eric found it impossible to respond to your questions in the previous segment without using a good deal of body language.
Yes.
And I appreciate that. So the listeners might have missed it, but they should go back and look at the archived video on Facebook. Mm-hmm. I am interested in the idea that in order to have a conversation, the leaders of Ragamala wanted to draw in the cultural creators of Full Circle Theater, Rick Shiomi and Martha Johnson. And, you know, as I was listening to Eric, I thought of that 25-cent academic word, hybridity. And I thought one of the things about hybridity is that it's not mushy. That it really, you have to start by actually being grounded in a particular culture. You don't just say, oh, I'll take one from column A and one from column B and one from column C and then
have your Chinese dinner.
Right. or my Pan-Asian dinner.
Yeah, exactly.
And so I think that Eric's done a great job of explaining how committed the Ragamala creators are to a very specific art form. But then how they see their work happening in an American context. And I think also the hybridity applies to theatrical forms. And so
it's rooted,
dance,
deep-rooted.
It's rooted in dance, but there are ways that it's meeting theater. And I think of work that we've done with Rick and Martha and Full Circle and ways that they've wanted to use dance internally to some of their creative work. So I was curious to ask Eric, how was the decision made to have this conversation about identity, a conversation with people from Full Circle Theater?
Absolutely. It's a great question. So within the scope of this Ragamala Rooted project and these 12 events, we thought one really important aspect of Ragamala's work is sort of representation and cultural identity and Ragamala's existence as an Indian art form, an Indian American company, an American company, and sort of transcending and crossing all of these lines. We're trying to think of what would be a great way to sort of introduce people to this incredibly important aspect of Ragamala's work, and we immediately thought of Rick and Martha and Full Circle and the work that they've been doing. They're good friends of the company. They're artistic. We are artistic admirers of their company.
And celebration of multicultural.
Exactly,
yes.
Yeah. And a lot of these similar ideas. Full Circle produces heartfelt, groundbreaking theater that artfully addresses ideas of human nature and social justice for 21st century audiences. That's part of their mission statement, and that's
it speaks to you.
That really spoke to us. It speaks to Ragamala's artistic identity as well. And we thought this would be just fascinating, personally, and for other people, to have a conversation between Rani and Aparna, Ragamala's co-artistic directors, and Rick and Martha, Full Circle's co-artistic directors. And so as we were thinking about this conversation, we then decided to ask Sandy Augustine to moderate the conversation. She's an acclaimed theater artist, dance artist, activist, is familiar with Ragamala's work, familiar with Rick and Martha's work, and just would be the perfect person to tie this all together. So having this conversation and kind of bringing it all together in this conversation, we want to explore what are the opportunities and challenges in creating culturally representative art, in both how Ragamala does that and in how Full Circle does that, which are very different ways of approaching that, but also similar in so many ways. And I thought it would just be a really interesting conversation to sort of explore the questions of how do you work across and within cultural communities and cultural art forms. How do you honor this challenge, and how do you find a place for both culturally specific art forms, culturally specific artists from these communities into the sort of the milieu of American art?
One of the questions, I know that Rick has taken some of his work back in Asia, and it's toured in Asia. And I think that's interesting because it has its roots in an Asian perspective, but it also celebrates the American
and Canadian
Vancouver viewpoints.
Yep.
Have you ever had Ragamala go back to India?
Yeah, so Ragamala has both performed solo performances in India, which Bharatanatyam is traditionally a solo form. And so there is sort of it's called the Margam, is the standard traditional recital. And so we've done that. Aparna Ramaswamy, one of our artistic directors, has performed several times as a soloist in India, done sort of the festival circuit. There's a particular season when a lot of performances happen in Chennai. But in addition to that, we've also performed ensemble pieces there, pieces that are a little bit less strictly classical in sort of the format and the approach.
What feedback did you get? Has there been some interesting, I can see the American influence, or has it been, that's just another interesting way of performing it?
Both. We get a lot of feedback that our work is both
true to form.
Yeah, incredibly true to form. And it's interesting. In India, there are also a lot of dancers doing innovative and different types of work. And so, in many ways, we are more classical than like many Indian artists. But the piece that we most recently brought to India was called Sacred Earth, and it combined Bharatanatyam with a couple other kolam and warli sort of traditional folk arts. And so that, I think, was a different sort of combination that people hadn't seen before, but that because it really respected the foundation and the classical center of the art, that it was well received.
Well, you had mentioned that there's some other events coming up as well.
Right. I think that this theme of representations and cultural identity is a theme that we're really working with in the month of May. And early next week on Monday night, and maybe your listeners are aware that Monday nights are often good nights to engage theater professionals in conversations because it's their typical night off.
Yes.
And so we're taking advantage of a Monday night off, Monday, May 6th, to have a conversation about two pieces of theater that are going up this month in the Twin Cities. One is a musical called Dirty Business, a completely new piece.
And that's at the History, right?
At the History Theater in St. Paul, written by Laura Heggie Flanagan, and she is going to be part of the conversation. And this is a musical about four women who engaged in different forms of espionage during World War II.
She danced and she spied.
Right. And we have all kinds of tropes and stereotypes in our heads about what they must have been like. And so Laura has put these together, and she's going to be helping us to discuss how gender gets represented on stage. And then there are two wonderful artists from Los Angeles who are being brought to town by Pangea. This is such a project. They're being brought by Pangea, but the piece is going to be staged at Mixed Blood. And it's a play about Micronesian identities in Hawaii. And one of the co-artistic directors is Laotian, the other is Hawaiian, and their piece is called Masters of the Currents, and I think currents probably has multiple meanings, one of which has to do with water, others of which probably have to do with culture. And so we're going to all come together on the Monday night, May 6th, to have a conversation about kind of the politics of representation, gender, and race. And then later in the month, we're going to be hosting the Black Ensemble Players in their production, an all-black production with a very West African kind of timbre, their production of Shakespeare's A Midsummer Night's Dream.
And that should be just fabulous.
It should be absolutely fabulous, and fabulous to see how is Shakespeare different. When there are black bodies and accents and music,
interpretation. Maybe there's a shift in nuance that new discoveries get made.
I'm sure. And so that's going to run May 16, 17, 18, and 19 at the library. So it's a Thursday, Friday, and Saturday night and a Sunday afternoon matinee.
And then on a Monday of May 20th.
And then Monday of May 20th, we have this conversation between folks from Ragamala and folks from Full Circle Theater.
Well, Eric, I really appreciate you coming today and sharing, your own passion, as well as letting us know about this conversation and conversations that will take place, as well as get us excited about 2020.
Yes.
And the opportunity to see this on stage. It's very visionary. It's got smarts to it. And you're becoming an ambassador for the work that's being done. So we appreciate that. And we appreciate all the nuances and new ways of looking at this traditional theater and creating multidisciplinary ways of dancing and interpreting dance.
Yes.
So,
well, thank you. Thank you both very much.
Thank you, Eric.
Wonderful to be here.
And we also want to thank Brunson's Pub a place where history and passion are part of every detail, starting with the menu. And when you come to experience the Brunson Pub, it's at 956 Payne Avenue. Grab a discounted gift card when you mention either AM 950 as a listener or if you're a supporter of the Eastside Freedom Library. And you can learn about getting that by going to brunsonspub.com. Also, go to the calendar events section on the eastsidefreedomlibrary.org. You'll see about all these events. Pay particular attention to Monday nights. It sounds like we rock and roll on Monday nights, but there's always something fun happening at the Eastside Freedom Library. And if you want to learn more about our Connections Radio show, we have a fairly new website, which is connectionsradiomn.com. And I encourage you to look at our community partners. The Eastside Freedom Library is our community partner and is on every first Saturday of the month. So tune in for our Eastside Freedom Conversations. And stay tuned with us. We have one more segment, and we'll be talking more about the other programs coming up in the month of May, and maybe a little preview of what's happening in June and July as well.
Sure.
So stay tuned. We're glad you're here, and we're glad you've made the connection.
It's the age of artificial intelligence. 85-year-old Marjorie, a jumble of disparate, fading memories, has a handsome new companion, me, a hologram who's been programmed to feed her the story of her life back to her. If given the chance, what would you remember? What would you forget? Jordan Harrison's new play explores the mysteries of human identity and what technology offers. Prime Productions presents the play Marjorie Prime at St. Paul's Park Square Theater. Performances run April 19th to May 19th. For tickets, visit parksquaretheater.org.
Minnesota is the home of heroes. Dock and Lift in Spring Park recognizes all of our local military members. A world of thanks to those who serve and their families for securing peace and prosperity for our country. Freedom rings because of your great sacrifice. Brave hearts who continue to lay down their own lives to protect and defend ours. Dock and Lift in Spring Park. We love our freedom, so we support our troops. We live in the land of the free, thanks to the brave.
Tom Hartman here telling you that solar energy isn't just for environmentalists. Switching to all-energy solar is actually perfect for reducing your carbon footprint while also saving money on your monthly electric bill. The fact that solar panels cause no earth-harming emissions while it's producing energy is a bonus. Who in the world could object to that? But they can also help you save money month after month for decades. And they do it with a clean footprint. So go green and start saving money today by visiting allenergysolar.com.
Get $50 for your trade-in regardless of condition when you buy new appliances from Warner Stellian. Minnesota's appliance specialists beat the competition once again with guaranteed sale prices, trusted fast free local delivery, and now for a limited time, $50 for every appliance you replace with a qualifying model. Replace your tired, inefficient appliances and get $50 trade-in rebates. The more you replace, the more you save. For a very limited time, exclusively from Minnesota's own original appliance specialists, Warner Stellian.
Get out of the cold at Burger Mo's. Burger Monday Madness happens every Monday after 4 p.m., except on Excel event evenings, where you can order any burger with fries on the menu for just $6. Burger Mo's always offers fresh, never-frozen burger varieties, as well as delicious appetizers, soups, salads, and unburgers, dogs, paninis, shakes, desserts, 2 daily happy hours, and 60 beers on tap. Located at 242 West 7th Street in St. Paul with plenty of free parking and online at burgermos.com.
It's the age of artificial intelligence. 85-year-old Marjorie, a jumble of disparate, fading memories, has a handsome new companion, me, a hologram who's been programmed to feed her the story of her life back to her. If given the chance, what would you remember? What would you forget? Jordan Harrison's new play explores the mysteries of human identity and what technology offers. Prime Productions presents the play Marjorie Prime at St. Paul's Park Square Theater. Performances run April 19th to May 19th. For tickets, visit parksquaretheater.org.
Good morning, and welcome back to Connections Radio Show. I'm Lori Fitz, your host, and today we've been talking about programs at the Eastside Freedom Library because it's the first Saturday of the month, and we get to celebrate the Eastside Freedom Library with my co-host, Peter Ratcliffe, who's also the co-executive director of the Eastside Freedom Library. Welcome, Peter.
Thank you, Lori.
And in our fourth segment, it's always fun because we're always looking to what's coming up and giving previews for folks. We've had a chance to talk about Ragamala, the great conversation that's coming up on May 20th. We talked a little bit about the Black Ensemble Theater that is going to be giving performances of Midsummer Night's Dream. If you're wanting more information on this, you can just go to to the eastsidefreedomlibrary.org, and you can look up those events. But there's a few more that you're going to highlight for us. Tell us about some other things coming up this month.
I would also say go to our Facebook page, and where there are Facebook events, but also lots of substantive articles contextualizing the issues that the events engage. So do visit and like our Facebook page. So, what would a library be if it didn't also deal with books?
Absolutely.
And so we have our own interesting ways of dealing with books and the kinds of conversations that we want to promote. And so typically we try to enlist one or two other people in addition to an author to engage that author in front of an audience and kind of open up some areas of question and then turn to an audience for a larger conversation. So we have two absolutely thrilling events around books that are memoirs written by local African Americans that we will be featuring in the month of May. And the first is the Melvin Carter Jr., also known as the dad of the mayor. And he has written a memoir called Diesel Heart. And in partnership with the Ramsey County Historical Society and their History Revealed program, we're sponsoring an event with Mr. Carter on Tuesday night, May 7th, and he will be in conversation with Marvin Anderson, who is really the founder and spiritual heart essence of the We Remember Rondo festivals, and Marvin has been central to getting this project of building an overlook over Interstate 94 and making sure that it's inclusive of Hmong and other residents of Rondo, not only an African-American story.
And for those that don't know what the Rondo story is,
So Rondo was the historically African-American community in St. Paul.
A thriving business and neighborhood.
And that had two union halls on Rondo Avenue. And Rondo was destroyed in the late 50s, early 60s. By the building of Interstate 94.
Went right through the heart.
Right through the heart. It's not an uncommon story for the building of the interstate highway system in the United States. No one has yet really written the book about the whole story from coast to coast, but which communities were picked and which communities were divided.
Which weren't considered important.
Right.
Or was there even perhaps some nefarious reasons why those communities were destroyed by a roadway.
Yeah. So I think that Mr. Carter would describe himself as a child of Rondo and now the father of the mayor. And we're very excited to have him and Marvin Anderson joining us on May 7th, Tuesday, May 7th. And then a week later, on Tuesday, May 14th, we're absolutely thrilled to be hosting our old friend, Dr. Josie Johnson. Josie was the first African-American vice president of the University of Minnesota. She grew up in Texas and then migrated to the Twin Cities and then became an organizer of both women of color and white women to go back to the South in the 1960s and participate in the civil rights movement. And in the process of writing her memoir, she drew on two local African-American women writers, Arleta Little and Carolyn Holbrook, and they both really are kind of co-authors of Josie's remarkable memoir titled Hope in the Struggle. And the three of them will have a conversation on Tuesday, May 14th at the Eastside Freedom Library.
That guarantees to be dynamic.
It will be amazing. Any one of them could more than hold forth of an evening, but to see the three of them together is a great opportunity for all of us, and it's a great opportunity for the Twin Cities to honor Josie and the work that Josie has done, and generations of women and young men that she has mentored, She's just been a bedrock of this community. So those are two book events, and then we look down the road in the rest of the summer. Summer is not a time to slow down at the Eastside Freedom Library, and we're just so honored that our old friend Jelani Cobb is willing to come to town and celebrate us in the 5th anniversary of the Eastside Freedom Library. And
that's on June 12th?
That's on June 12th. And sort of interestingly, our very first event in June of 2014, when we first took occupancy of the building, was a celebration of Juneteenth. And so Juneteenth and its celebration of freedom and the idea, and the title for Jelani's talk is The Half-Life of Freedom. I'm not quite sure what he means by that, but I'm sure it's going to be really brilliant. And it's an opportunity for all of us, non-black as well as black, all of us to really ask, what does freedom mean to us now in the 21st century?
And if we get lazy about freedom, I think that's
how easy it is to lose.
Exactly.
Yes.
And do we get to a halfway point and wake up
and
go, wait a minute, that we're talking about our freedom, we're talking about our Constitution, we're talking about equal rights, we're talking. There seems to be wake up calls that periodically, get us thinking and keep us off from just getting lazy about our freedoms.
Yeah. And given that this new PBS documentary has just come out on Reconstruction with Henry Louis Gates, these are subjects that people are looking at. And again, in our kind of vision at the Eastside Freedom Library, it's about having a conversation between the past and the present. So what does Reconstruction... Well, you can't...
Exactly.
You can't envision the future if you don't have a conversation between the present and the past. And so this is a great opportunity to continue to do that. We're also looking forward to launching a film series that connects back with the work that we did with ABC Realty and the question of the housing gap. There's an increasing number of good documentary films that look at the challenges of home ownership faced by people of color in the Twin Cities and elsewhere. So stay tuned.
Stay tuned. And also, as I've said before, check out their website, eastsidefreedomlibrary.org. And you've been listening to Connections Radio Show, where we connect with the East Side, and we connect with you, and we connect with artists, and we connect with dancers and authors, and hopefully bring the East Side into your living room or your car for a good conversation. But I also want to inspire you to be live and in person at the Eastside Freedom Library and consider being a collaborator there. Shake it up. Make a difference. Yeah. Thank you, Peter. Always have a great time with our show here. So thank you, and stay tuned for next week on Connections Radio Show. We want you to connect with us. Have a good one.